Chapter 11:12. Let's go. Nailin Yu lifted the tent flap and walked out with a satisfied expression on her face. She glanced at the shadow indifferently and then walked forward. The shadow nodded and followed behind Nailin Yu. Nailin Yu easily arrived at a tent filled with guards. She lifted the curtain of the tent and a thick smell of blood wafted out. Nailin Yu's lips curled into a faint smile as she stood in the middle of the tent. Did I serve you well? Inside the tent was a large cage. In this cage, there was a person covered in blood lying inside. His messy hair covered his face, and it was impossible to see what his face looked like. Since the young miss ordered us, we naturally wouldn't dare to delay. The two guards beside her respectfully stood beside Nailin Yu and bowed as they answered Nailin Yu's words. Raise his head. The corners of Nailin Yu's mouth curled up into a satisfied smile. She slowly walked towards the iron cage. The two guards hurriedly moved a large chair to Nailin Yu's side and sat down at the entrance of the iron cage. Hey, get up! That person raised his foot and kicked the door of the iron cage. The person inside the iron cage didn't move at all. One of them carried a basin of water forward and fiercely splashed that person's face. Only then did that person wake up with a start. The person covered in wounds shook his head, revealing his entire face. He had handsome eyebrows and sharp eyes. An incomparably handsome face was revealed in front of everyone. Xiao Chen, are you still not willing? Nailin Yu looked at Xiao Chen's handsome face. Her eyes were slightly dazed for a moment before she said faintly. Xiao Chen, who was originally supposed to be dead, was currently sitting up with his arms covered in wounds. He looked at Nailin Yu with a pair of indifferent eyes and lowered his head without saying a word. Xiao Chen, I'll ask you again. Are you coming with me or not? A trace of anger appeared in Nailin Yu's eyes. She looked at Xiao Chen, who didn't show any emotion, and fiercely said, Do you think you can still see Jingyu? Let me tell you, Jingyu thought you were dead a long time ago. You're already a dead man to Jingyu. Nailin Yu looked at Xiao Chen emotionally and said, I swear, as long as you lower your head, nothing will happen to you. I'll take you back to the poison sect. Whatever you want to do, we'll do it together, all right? Nailin Yu looked at Xiao Chen expectantly, but no matter what she said, Xiao Chen just hung his head and remained indifferent. Xiao Chen, don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Nailin Yu was quite angry at Xiao Chen's attitude. Her face was full of anger as she roared at Xiao Chen. But the only response she got was endless silence. It had already been a month, but Xiao Chen hadn't said a single word. It could even be said that he hadn't even looked at Nailin Yu. He just quietly hid on the cold ground, not moving at all. Where's the poison? Use all of it. I want him to talk. I want him to talk. Nailin Yu stood up and grabbed the guard in front of her as she shouted angrily. Third, young miss, there's no more poison that can be used. The guard gulped in fear and said, We've used all the methods we can, but he still won't talk. Chapter 11:13. Trash. A bunch of trash. Nailin Yu lifted her foot and fiercely kicked the guard's body. Her eyes were filled with anger. I don't care what method you have. I want him to speak. Nailin Yu slowly stood up. Her eyes were filled with ice as she said, Do you understand? I want him to speak. Yes, yes, yes. The two guards hurriedly knelt on the ground and repeatedly answered. Nailin Yu raised her hand and grabbed the iron cage. Her eyes were filled with ice as she stared at Xiao Chen and said, Let me tell you a piece of good news. Jing Lang has been captured. Jingyu will definitely come to save him. She will be here soon. Aren't you happy? The moment Xiao Chen heard Nailin Yu's words, he suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with astonishment. It doesn't matter if you're happy. I definitely won't let Jingyu see you. The only thing you'll see is Jingyu's corpse. Nailin Yu saw that Xiao Chen had such a big reaction when he heard Jingyu's name. The jealousy in her heart was about to swallow her whole. Walala! The iron chains that locked Xiao Chen's hands and feet shook. When Xiao Chen heard Nailin Yu's words, he seemed to have gone crazy as he rushed towards her. The ruthlessness in his eyes was clearly visible. You want to kill me? Nailin Yu silently took a step back. She looked at Xiao Chen's appearance, and the corners of her mouth hooked up into a cold smile as she said, Xiao Chen, don't worry. I will personally dig out Jingyu's heart and place it in front of you. Don't you love her? I'll let you take a good look at her heart. Naylan used cold-blooded words and such a beautiful face. Saying such words caused people's hearts to tremble. Their faces were filled with fear. Naylan Yu looked at Xiao Chen's crazy appearance, and the killing intent in her eyes became even stronger. The Xiao Chen that only treated her well because of Jingyu's appearance no longer cared about her. As long as Jingyu died, Jingyu would definitely change his mind. Xiao Chen, you have to believe that I love you. As long as you agree, I'll take you away. Naylan Yu looked at Xiao Chen with a tender expression as she spoke. Bah! Although Xiao Chen didn't say anything, his actions were even more provocative than his words. He spat a mouthful of blood on Naylan Yu's body. Xiao Chen's eyes were filled with disgust and ridicule, causing Naylan Yu to almost go crazy. Xiao Chen! Naylan Yu's chest heaved up and down as she fiercely glared at Xiao Chen and said, Beat him until he gives in. Naylan Yu's face was cold as she walked out of the tent. Not long after, a series of terrifying sounds came from within the tent. However, there wasn't a single cry of pain. Naylan Yu turned her head to look into the tent and fiercely clenched her fists. Jingyu had no idea what was happening here. The plains outside Jinling town were vast beyond compare. The Tokyo and Nanli's troops had set up camp here. The Holy Family and Poison Sect people were also living in this large camp. At this moment, Jingyu and Qin Bai were standing on a hill in the plains, looking at the scenery in front of them. That's where the Tokyo and Nanli's troops are stationed. Jingyu looked at the scenery in the distance, her golden eyes slightly narrowed. In her eyes, the scenery in front of her was incomparably clear. Chapter 11:14. The Poison Sect and the Holy Family are both there, but I don't know where they are. Jingyu frowned. Although the two armies are allies, they haven't merged. We need to find out where the main camp is before we can move. Jingyu frowned. She tilted her head and looked at Qin Bai. Let's sneak in tonight and figure out the route. Then we can plan our next move. All right, I'll go with you. Qin Bai nodded in response. No, the two of us will expose our tracks. Jingyu frowned and shook her head. We'll move separately. Our goal this time is just to figure out the terrain. Just don't expose our tracks. Can you do that? All right. Qin Bai nodded slowly in response to Jingyu's words. Remember, you must be careful. If anything seems off, retreat immediately. Jingyu frowned as she looked at Qin Bai. I know. You too. Qin Bai's eyes revealed a faint smile. He looked at Jingyu and curled his lips. Don't worry. Don't underestimate me. All right. Jingyu heard Qin Bai's words and smiled faintly. She agreed to Qin Bai's words. Let's go. We need to prepare a few things. Jingyu turned and entered the forest again, quietly waiting for night to come. Qin Bai narrowed his eyes. He glanced at the large camp on the plains, then turned away indifferently. Jingyu had already made her preparations. Lu Miaoqiu and the Crown Prince, who were far away in the Dongqing Imperial City, finally returned to the Imperial City. The originally bustling Imperial City seemed to have become somewhat unfamiliar. Lu Miaoqiu sat in the carriage and lifted a corner of the curtain slightly to look outside. The buildings were the same, and the people didn't seem to have changed. However, for some reason, when Lu Miaoqiu looked at the people in front of her, her eyes were filled with a sense of unfamiliarity. It was as if she had been separated by a lifetime. The carriage drove towards the Imperial Palace. Lu Miaoqiu slowly lowered the curtains and closed her eyes. What's wrong? Are you nervous? Xiao Yuling's voice sounded in Lu Miaoqiu's ears. Lu Miaoqiu raised her eyebrows in surprise and looked at Xiao Yuling from the corner of her eyes. She narrowed her eyes and said, Which eye of yours saw that I was nervous? Xiao Yuling's face stiffened. Lu Miaoqiu. Oh! Lu Miaoqiu replied expressionlessly. Xiao Yuling was so angry that her face turned green. No matter who she was in front of, Xiao Yuling always thought that she had a good temper. However, She didn't know why every time she spoke to Lu Miaoqiu, she would fly into a rage. The Crown Prince's Eastern Palace was the same as before. There were no changes. Lu Miaoqiu, the Crown Princess, had been brought back. Not only that, even before they reached the Imperial City, rumors about Lu Miaoqiu and Jingyu had spread everywhere. It was said that the Crown Princess and the 9th Imperial concubine had fallen out and quarreled. Now everyone in the Imperial City knew about it. The first thing Lu Miaoqiu did when she returned to the Imperial City was to go to the Emperor and ask for forgiveness. After such a long time, Lu Miaoqiu finally saw Ning Xiangyuan again. Ning Xiangyuan was sitting beside Xiao Yi. She was wearing a phoenix robe. She had exquisite makeup on her face, and her dark eyes were staring at Jingyu. Her chest was exposed, and every man's eyes couldn't help but stare at her, right? Chapter 11:15. Xiao Yi seemed to dote on Ning Xiangyuan very much, allowing Ning Xiangyuan to sit beside him. Lu Miaoqiu quietly knelt under the Tang dynasty. She glanced at Xiao Yi and Ning Xiangyuan before continuing to kneel. Xiao Yi looked even older than before. He was only in his 40s, but there were some white hairs around his ears. Lu Miaoqiu still remembered that when she left, Xiao Yi did not look like this. She did not expect that in such a short period of time, there would be such a big change. Since the Crown Princess has recognized her mistake, Zhen will not pursue it further for the Crown Prince's sake. Xiao Ye's voice was filled with exhaustion. He frowned slightly and looked sideways at Ning Xiangyuan. What does the Empress think? The Crown Princess did not do it on purpose. I heard that it was because of the 9th Imperial concubine. Ning Xiangyuan slowly straightened her body, a faint smile on her lips. She slowly turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "After all, Qinxia and the Crown Princess were once good sisters. Since the Empress has said so, Jin will not say more this time." Xiao Yi turned to look at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "But there must be punishment. Crown Princess, you will be punished to copy Buddhist scriptures 100 times as a warning to others. Are you willing?" Qinxia thanks the Emperor. Lu Miaoqiu lowered her head and responded, "Your Majesty, Qinxia and the Crown Princess have not seen each other for a long time. Can Qinxia and the Crown Princess catch up?" Ning Xiangyuan looked at Xiao Yi with a dignified expression and said, "Huh." Xiao Yi heard Ning Xiangyuan's words, and his eyes were filled with satisfaction. He patted Ning Xiangyuan's hand and said, "The Empress is indeed sensible. Since that is the case, you can catch up. Jin and the Crown Prince also have matters to discuss." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Ning Xiangyuan seemed to be very shy as she lowered her head and respectfully sent Xiao Yi out of the palace. Only then did she turn around and look at Lu Miaoqiu. The corner of her mouth hooked up into a faint smile as she walked over and said, "Little Sister Lu, quickly get up. There are no outsiders here, so there is no need to kneel." "Thank you, Your Highness." Lu Miaoqiu stood up as instructed, but her head was still lowered. "This consort knows that you're feeling terrible right now." Ning Xiangyuan raised her hand to hold Lu Miaoqiu's hand and said earnestly, "This consort was also like this back then. Now you know what kind of person Jingyu is, right?" Lu Miaoqiu still had her head lowered. Although she did not speak, her tightly clenched hands revealed Lu Miaoqiu's current emotions. Ning Xiangyuan clearly saw Lu Miaoqiu's actions and smiled faintly. She said comfortingly, "Crown Princess, to be able to sit on the position of Crown Princess, you are definitely not an ordinary person. I know that you hate Jingyu to the core. Since that is the case, why don't we cooperate?" Ning Xiangyun looked indifferently at Lu Miaoqiu and said, "Crown Princess, go back and think about it. You can give me an answer at any time." When Lu Miaoqiu returned to the Eastern Palace, the sky had already darkened. The Eastern Palace was lit up with lights. Xiao Yuling and Lu Miaoqiu had returned together. A servant came forward to take off their outer robes before the two sat down in the room. "What did the Empress say to you?" Xiao Yuling raised her hand to pour a cup of tea for herself. She paused and then poured a cup for Lu Miaoqiu. Her expression was calm as she asked. Chapter 11:16. What else can I say? Lu Miaoqiu smiled and said, "She just wants me to work with her and help her. You agree? Xiao Yuling raised her eyebrows and looked at Lu Miaoqiu. Do you think I would agree so easily? Lu Miaoqiu looked at the tea that Xiao Yuling had poured for her and paused for a moment. She raised her hand and took a sip. Then, as if she found it funny, she said, Your Highness the Crown Prince is pouring tea for me? Could it be that you encountered something interesting with the Emperor? Huh. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, her hand holding the teacup paused. She smiled and said, If I didn't encounter anything interesting, I can't pour tea for you. If you didn't encounter anything interesting and suddenly poured tea for me. Lu Miaoqiu turned her gaze to Xiao Yuling. She narrowed her eyes and said, Then I have to think carefully. Is this tea poisoned or is there a problem? Xiao Yuling's face darkened. She took a deep breath and turned her head to say, The Emperor wants me to supervise the government. He wants you to participate in the government? A hint of surprise appeared in Lu Miaoqiu's eyes as she furrowed her brows. With a serious expression, she said, It seems that Ning Xiangyuan's probing has begun. If you manage your political affairs well, it seems that we have thought of the same thing. Xiao Yuling smiled and said, Ning Xiangyuan has taken a dangerous step. You have to know how great the temptation of participating in the government is. If I use this opportunity to flip the cards, the throne is almost at your fingertips. How can the temptation not be great? As Xiao Yuling said this, the light in her eyes was very obvious. What? Are you tempted? Lu Miaoqiu calmly put down the teacup in her hand and said, If this is a trap set by Ning Xiangyun to lure you into, then don't worry, I will collect your corpse. When Xiao Yuling heard Lu Miaoqiu's words, she frowned and said, Can't you say something nice? Did I say something unpleasant? Lu Miaoqiu blinked in confusion and said, Or, Your Highness, you don't need me to collect your corpse. Xiao Yuling silently chose to shut her mouth. She downed the tea in her hand as though she was venting. She stood up and walked towards the inner room. As she took off her outer clothes, Lu Miaoqiu looked at Xiao Yuling's actions and frowned slightly. Your Highness, this is my room. It was a clear order for him to leave. I know. Xiao Yuling responded calmly. She placed her outer robe on the screen and said indifferently, Today, I want the crown princess to serve me in bed. Lu Miaoqiu's expression froze. Her eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Xiao Yuling. What? You don't understand? When Xiao Yuling saw Lu Miaoqiu's change in expression, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She seemed to find Lu Miaoqiu's expression very interesting. She raised her brows slightly and said calmly, Shouldn't the crown princess fulfill her duties as the crown princess? Xiao Yuling. Lu Miaoqiu stood up with an ashen expression. She glared fiercely at Xiao Yuling, who had taken off her outer clothes and was slowly walking in. Xiao Yuling stood next to Lu Miaoqiu. When she saw her angry expression, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Chapter 11:17. Linglan, why are you here? Jing Yu frowned. Didn't she say it clearly before she left? Thank goodness I have burial flower. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to find you. Shengguan Linglan got off the black qilin and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Jing Yu. Thank goodness I made it in time. Otherwise, we would have been in big trouble. What's wrong? Jing Yu raised her eyebrows and looked at Shengguan Linglan in confusion. Brother Jinglang is back. Shengguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu and said, Brother Jinglang wasn't taken away. He's back. What? Jing Yu's brain short-circuited for a moment. She stared at Shengguan Linglan in shock. On the morning you left, Big Brother Jinglang came back. And I also brought back news that Dongqing and Nanli have already set up an inescapable trap and are just waiting for you to rush in. If it weren't for the inked qilin and burial flower, I would be here to collect your corpses. What's going on? Jing Yu was completely confused and frowned at Shengguan Linglan. Let's talk about it when we get back. I'm afraid that Nanli and the Tokyo will chase us here. Shengguan Linglan didn't stop and led Jing Yu and Qin Bai back. Such a strange farce ended with Jing Yu returning to the forest. Jinglang really came back, but he came back with injuries. Inside the wooden house, Jing Yu rushed back regardless of day and night. Her body was covered in dust, and her face was a little tired. At this moment, he was sitting on a chair in the wooden house. Jing Lang and Shangwan Linglan were also in the wooden house. "Brother, you're saying that someone saved you while you were being taken away by Nan Li. But you don't know who it was?" Jing Yu frowned, her eyes filled with confusion. "Not only that, you also overheard Nan Li and the Tokyo S plan?" "Yes." Jing Lang's body was wrapped in gauze. At this moment, he was sitting on the bed and looking at Jing Yu. He said, "Their goal was to set a trap. They used me as bait to lure you to rescue me. They set up an inescapable net. Then who was the person who saved you?" Jing Yu frowned deeply. Her eyes were filled with doubt. No matter how hard she racked her brains, she could not figure out who had the ability to save someone from Nan Li's clutches. Furthermore, they had acted so soon after they had left the forest. She really couldn't figure it out. "I don't know." Jing Lang also frowned and shook his head. "It's a bit like a Jianghu person, but why would a Jianghu person come to the Roman forest?" Everyone was puzzled. Jing Lang's body had not yet recovered. Jing Yu left the house after speaking for a while. Standing on the lawn outside the house, Jing Yu sighed deeply and slowly frowned. Since Jing Lang was fine, there was naturally no need to rescue him. However, Second Xing's poison still needed to be cured. However, with Qing Ge by his side, there was no need to be in such a hurry to find the antidote for Second Xing. He just needed to arrange it properly and make sure nothing went wrong. Jing Yu returned to her hut to rest. The next morning, Jing Yu received news that Xing Er, who had been in a coma for so many days, had finally woken up. "Madam," Second Xing's face was still a little pale. Seeing Jing Yu's arrival, he called out and seemed to want to sit up with his arms propped up. Chapter 11:18. No need to be so courteous, just lie down. Jing Yu sat down on a chair beside Xing Er's bed, asking Qing Gu about Xing Er's condition. She found out that Xing Er's internal injuries were mostly healed, and the most important thing now was the poison in his body. Currently, Xing Er did not have any internal energy and was no different from an ordinary person. Shangwan Linglan had been taking care of Xing Er day and night, and seeing that Xing Er had awoken, she was relieved that he was fine. "Xing Er, do not worry, your poison will definitely be cured." Jing Yu sat in the room, looking at Xing Er as she said, "The most important thing now is to heal your injuries. As for the antidote, I will think of a way. Your subordinate understands." After Xing Er found out about his condition, he did not change much. Hearing Jing Yu's words, he slowly nodded in agreement. In the following time, Shangwan Linglan spent the nights taking care of Xing Er, while in the day, she trained the Beast Army with Jing Yu. After half a month of training, Xing Er's internal injuries were finally healed with Qing Ji's help. As for the Wanshou army that Jing Yu had painstakingly built, they finally showed their true abilities. Their teamwork, their meticulously crafted weapons and armor, as well as the saddle ropes made by the jackal, tiger leopard, were all completed perfectly. It had to be said that Jin Hai's skills were not to be underestimated, and this level of craftsmanship caused Jing Yu to sigh in amazement. As the training of the tiger leopard drew to a close, Jing Yu, who had been busy the entire day, returned home. She saw Xing Er standing on the hill, carving wood from a boulder, a dagger in his hand, as if he was doing something interesting. Jing Yu smiled faintly as she walked toward Xing Er. Ever since his injuries had healed, he could no longer sit still and would walk around with nothing to do. Jing Yu had seen him walk around many times. "What a beautiful wooden fish." Jing Yu's voice sounded faintly. Xing Er was so shocked that he almost cut his hand. When he saw Jing Yu standing behind him, he hurriedly stood up and said, "Madam, this subordinate, there's no need to be so formal." When Jing Yu saw Xing Er's expression, she shook her head and sat down on a rock nearby. Every time she heard Xing Er call her madam, Jing Yu's heart would ache uncontrollably. "Xing Er, tell me about Xiao Chun." Jing Yu raised her hand to look at the sky and pursed her lips slightly. "Master!" Xing Er's eyes widened slightly when he heard Jing Yu's words. Because of Jing Yu, Xing Er and the others didn't dare to mention anything about Xiao Chun in front of Jing Yu. They were afraid that they would agitate Jingyu. It's fine. Speak. Jingyu slowly lowered her head and said, I want to hear about Xiao Chen from you. You've been with Xiao Chen for a long time, right? Yes. Xing Er stood beside Jingyu and lowered his head slightly. He seemed to be organizing his words as he slowly told her about Xiao Chen. Xing Er wasn't a talkative person, but this time he seemed to have endless things to say. He had been with Xiao Chen through fire and water, received orders, killed, saved, and harmed. He knew everything clearly. He had treated Xiao Chen as his master, but Xiao Chen had never treated him as a servant. Madam, do you still remember how Master was when you met him in the Roman forest? Xing Er seemed to have thought of something as he tilted his head slightly to look at Jingyu and said, At that time, Master was being chased by the second prince and escaped into the forest to shake off his pursuers. Chapter 11:19. Of course I remember. Jingyu nodded with a faint smile when she heard Xing Er's words. Master was seriously injured in the middle of the night and thought that he would be safe after escaping into the forest. He didn't expect to step on a trap, and his calf was injured quite badly. It must have left a deep scar. That trap was set by Madam to catch prey, right? Xing Er lowered his head and looked at Jingyu as he spoke. Huh, I didn't expect him to be so unlucky. Jingyu smiled. As long as she heard Xing Er's words, Jingyu could almost imagine Xiao Chen's appearance when he stepped on the trap. However, Xiao Chen's calf was injured? Wait a minute, Xiao Chen's calf was injured. Xing Er, what did you just say? Xiao Chen's calf was injured because he stepped on a trap? Jingyu seemed to have thought of something as she suddenly stood up. Her eyes widened slightly as she stared at Xing Er and asked. Yes. Xing Er blinked blankly when he saw Jingyu's sudden emotional outburst. The injury on his calf. Trap. Jingyu's heart suddenly shrank as if she had thought of something. She hurriedly rushed down the mountain. Xing Er was quite frightened by Jingyu's emotional state and hurriedly ran after her. However, his injuries hadn't fully recovered yet. He couldn't do any strenuous exercise and could only watch as Jingyu rushed down the mountain. Yua? What's wrong? Jingyu happened to be outside to get some fresh air. Because he was injured, it wasn't easy for him to come out for a walk. When he saw Jingyu's panicked expression, his heart tightened and he hurriedly went forward to stop her. Big brother? Jingyu grabbed Jinglang's hand excitedly and said, Quick, I want to go to Xiao Chen's grave. I want to open a museum. What did you say? Jinglang's eyes narrowed when he heard Jingyu's words. That body might not be Xiao Chen's. No. Jingyu was so excited that she couldn't speak coherently. The commotion attracted Shengwan Linglan, Qinggu, and the others. As soon as they heard Jingyu's words, their eyes widened. Are you confused? Jinglang looked at Jingyu worriedly and said, Did you forget? You saw Xiao Chen die with your own eyes. No, it won't happen. Jingyu's eyes became misty. She grabbed Jinglang's hand excitedly and said, I helped the body change into new clothes. I saw the scar on his calf. It was an arrow wound. But Xing Er said that the wound on Xiao Chen's calf was caused by a trap. The trap used bamboo, not arrows. Jingyu became more and more excited as she spoke. She grabbed Jinglang's hand tightly and said, That body isn't Xiao Chen's. I want to open the coffin and examine the body. Everyone's eyes widened when they heard Jingyu's words. Xing Er, who had chased after them, also heard Jingyu's words. His eyes narrowed and widened as he looked at Jingyu with fear. Is what you said true? Jinglang was deeply shocked. If what Jingyu said was true, then if the body that was buried wasn't Xiao Chen's, then whose body could it be? Where was the real Xiao Chen's body? Who created a fake body? Yes. Jingyu nodded firmly. Ninth brother has been buried for a long time. His body has already decayed. Also, if it's really ninth brother's body, wouldn't it be disrespectful to open the coffin after he was buried? Ninth sister-in-law don't. Qinggu frowned. Chapter 11:20. He really couldn't agree with such a method. Qinggu, that's not Xiao Chen. It's not. Jingyu's eyes were filled with agitation as she looked at Qinggu and said, I'm begging you. Just let me confirm it. I just want to know if that is Xiao Chun. Jingyu's pleading tone made Qing Ji's throat tighten. When had Jingyu ever begged someone so humbly before? But the deceased is already dead. If we open the coffin now, it's really... Qing Ge frowned as he felt extremely conflicted. Jingyu, go and open it. At that moment, Shangwan Linglan suddenly stepped forward. He looked at Jingyu with a resolute expression and said, I also don't believe that the 9th emperors would die so easily. I'll go with you. That's right. Jinglang also looked at Jingyu firmly and said, go and open it. If the person buried there really isn't the 9th emperors, then perhaps the death of the 9th emperors was a huge conspiracy. Okay. Jingyu looked at everyone's faces as tears welled up in her eyes. At that moment, Jingyu suddenly felt extremely emotional. She had a feeling that the 4 benefits had been rekindled. Jingyu really didn't want to give up on her last ray of hope. No, definitely not. Qing Ge quickly jumped out when he saw everyone's expressions and said righteously, I definitely won't let you dig up 9th brother's grave. If you, let me go, As expected, Qing Ge was tied up by Li Weiming and the rest. Jingyu didn't want to stop for even a moment. She rushed to Xiao Qin's grave that very night. Li Weiming brought the ink Qilin, Jingyu, and Shangwan Linglan along with Qing Ge. Xing Er and Jing Lang's injuries hadn't healed yet, so the 2 of them could only wait in the forest. The next afternoon, everyone finally arrived at Xiao Qin's grave. They hadn't been here for a long time. The grass in the grave had already grown, and there were fallen leaves everywhere. There was also a thick layer of dust on the glossy tombstone. Jingyu stared at the tombstone and exchanged glances with Shangwan Linglan. Then, she picked up a large wooden knife and started digging. Li Weiming and the rest also stepped forward. Qing Ge was tied up and thrown to one side. He watched everyone dig up the grave with his own eyes. He kept shouting and screaming, but his mouth was gagged. He could only lie on the ground and cry without tears. As he watched Jingyu, Shangwan Linglan, and the rest, he wailed in his heart. 9th brother, I've let you down. My grave has been dug up by others. I've let you down. While Qing Ge was crying, Jingyu, Shangwan Linglan, and the rest finally touched the lid of the coffin. Their eyes lit up with joy as they finally revealed the complete coffin. Jingyu's heart couldn't help but beat violently when she saw the coffin in front of her. Was the person inside really Xiao Chun, or was it an imposter? Jingyu clenched her fists tightly and raised her hand to wipe the sweat off her face. She stared at the coffin and lifted her head slightly. Her eyes were filled with determination as she looked at Li Weiming and Shangwan Linglan. Shangwan Linglan and Li Weiming both nodded slowly. Everyone shouted as they stepped forward and used their large knives to pry open the coffin in front of them. Qing Ge knew that it was useless to stop them. He wriggled his body and sat up. His eyes widened as he watched the situation unfold. The lid of the coffin was successfully opened. A rotting smell filled the air. Everyone was prepared and held their breaths. When they saw the rotting corpse in front of them, Jingyu couldn't wait to jump in. Chapter 11:21. Jingyu lifted Xiao Qin's leg with a trembling hand under everyone's gaze. The flesh on his thigh had already rotted, and the scars couldn't be seen clearly. However, Jingyu could clearly see that the scars were wrinkled. Jingyu slowly reached over and easily removed the scars. Her eyes widened slightly. As if she had thought of something, she abruptly removed the corpse's clothes. She could clearly see that the original scars had all wrinkled up, and some of them had even fallen off. Those weren't real scars at all. They had been added on by someone else. This person wasn't Xiao Chun. Jingyu's eyes were filled with joy. She lifted her head and looked at the shocked faces of the crowd. She held the scars tightly in her hand and stood up. She jumped onto the ground and lifted her hand to close the lid of the coffin. It's fake. It's not Xiao Chun. Jingyu's eyes were filled with joy and excitement. She looked at Shangwan Linglan and said, Xiao Chun is still alive. He's not dead. He's not dead. That's great. Xiao Chun, he's still alive. Jingyu held the scars tightly in her hand. When Qing Ge heard this, his eyes widened slightly. He seemed to want to say something, but because his mouth was gagged, He could only weakly twist his body. Jingyu and everyone else heard Qing Ji's voice. Only then did they realize that Qinggu was still at the side. Li Weiming. Jingyu turned to look at Li Weiming. Li Weiming nodded and turned to Qinggu. He untied the ropes on Qing Ji's body and removed the cloth that was gagging his mouth. Quick, let me see. Qinggu ran over to Jingyu as soon as he was released from his restraints. When he saw what Jingyu handed over, his eyes were filled with astonishment. It's actually human skin, an illusion made from human skin. No wonder I didn't notice it at all. Qinggu held the thing and studied it for a long time before he slowly opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he went down to study the rotting corpse. It's the poison sect's doing. Qinggu stood in front of Jingyu and looked at Jingyu. The poison sect glued this thing on with a potion. Only the poison sect would be able to do something like this. Poison sect. Jingyu slowly furrowed her brows. I knew it. Xiaoqun definitely isn't dead. If this isn't Xiaoqun's corpse, why would the poison sect make this person look like Xiaoqun? And where is Xiaoqun now? Could it be that he's fallen into the poison sect's hands? Jingyu's expression turned frosty as she thought of this. She clenched her fists tightly. If Xiaoqun wasn't dead and had fallen into Nailan Yu's hands, what would he be like? That's all unknown. Qinggu slowly shook his head. Perhaps Ninth Brother wasn't taken away by the poison sect? Or perhaps Ninth Brother really is dead? The arrow that hit Ninth Brother. As soon as Qinggu finished speaking, Jingyu shuddered violently. No, that can't be. Xiaoqun definitely isn't dead. Jingyu clenched her fists tightly as she furrowed her brows. Xiaoqun isn't dead. He definitely isn't. Jingyu glared viciously at Qinggu as she repeated herself. But Qinggu was about to say something when he saw Jingyu's vicious glare and silently shut his mouth. Being tied up the entire way had been incomparably painful. He didn't want to go through it a second time. Qinggu silently lowered his head. The fact that the person in the coffin wasn't Xiaoqun was a great encouragement to Jingyu. Chapter 1122. After all this time, Jingyu had silently endured everything. It was as if she'd found something to rely on. The excitement, joy, and the feeling of coming back to life were so clear to her. There was only one thought in her mind. Her Xiaoqun wasn't dead. Jingyu, Shengwan Linglan, and the others returned quickly. What they had to do next was very important, and they had to let Shengwan Hongwen, Yuan Mingyuan, and the others know about it. So as soon as they returned, Jingyu gathered everyone together. When Jingyu announced the news, it caused quite a stir. At first, there was shock and disbelief, but then there was an unquenchable joy. The Ninth Emperor's wasn't dead. Ninth Imperial Concubine. If that's the case, then this was all a trap set up by the enemy. What does the Ninth Imperial Concubine plan to do? Shengwan Hongwen asked after a brief moment of joy. That's why I called you all here today. Jingyu looked around at the crowd and said, I don't know why this was set up, or if the mastermind is the poison sect, but I have to make a decision right now. We have been silent in the forest for so long, cultivating and recuperating, building the 10,000 beast army. Do you still remember our purpose? Jingyu's voice rang out slowly, drawing everyone's attention to her in an instant. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at Jingyu. How could we forget? Shengwan Hongwen took a deep breath and said, 100,000 soldiers were defeated at Tongmen Slope. Our brothers, our hatred. Everyone fell silent at Shengwan Hongwen's words. This was the reason why they'd been working so hard to become stronger. They wanted to turn the tables and avenge their brothers. Now, Jingyu had brought it up of her own accord. After such a long period of silence and hard work, are you all ready for revenge? Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile as she looked around and asked slowly, what does the Ninth Imperial Concubine mean? Shengwan Hongwen's eyes narrowed as he looked at Jingyu. Namli and the Tokyo have forced us to this point. It's time for us to strike back. Jingyu's eyes were fierce as she clenched her fists. It doesn't matter if Xiaoqun is in the poison sect or not. We must fight this battle. Jingyu's words. Everyone's eyes blazed with fervor as they looked at Jingyu. Then what plan do you plan to adopt this time? Yuan Mingyuan asked as he looked up at Jingyu. Declare war? Attack directly. Jingyu spat out each word. Everyone's eyes widened as they stared at Jingyu in shock. They never imagined that Jingyu's plan would be a frontal assault. The news that they were going to fight back and take revenge spread to all the soldiers. Their blood was ignited. Everyone rubbed their palms together. The hearts of the cavalrymen were filled with excitement. They were looking forward to what would happen on the battlefield this time. Inside the house, Jingyu was sitting by the table, staring at the map in front of her as if she was studying the route. When Fong Zicheng stepped into the house, he saw Jingyu's serious expression. Her eyebrows remained the same, but Fong Zicheng's eyes curved slightly. Chapter 11:23. Don't stand at the door, smiling like an idiot, you old fox. Jingyu didn't even raise her head as she calmly spat out these words. Fong Zicheng's smile instantly froze. I say, can you not call me a fox? Fong Zicheng walked towards Jingyu helplessly and said, I'm so handsome. How do I look like a fox? You look like a fox everywhere. Jingyu's mouth twitched as she expressionlessly replied. She raised her eyebrows and looked at Fong Zicheng with a smile. Why are you looking for me? Do you have any ideas for me? Fong Zicheng didn't answer Jingyu's question. Instead, his eyes looked up and down Jingyu's body, making Jingyu's hair stand on end. What are you looking at? Am I not wearing my clothes properly? Jingyu looked down at her clothes and glared at Fong Zicheng as she asked. Nothing. Fong Zicheng raised his eyebrows and said with amusement, I finally feel like the Jingyu from before is back. What nonsense are you talking about? Jingyu was stunned for a moment before she lowered her head and scolded him with a smile. Jingyu, Xiaoqun won't die. Don't worry. Fong Zicheng looked at Jingyu with incomparable seriousness as he spoke. Jingyu's body trembled when she heard this. She looked at Fong Zicheng with a questioning gaze and asked, What do you know? What do you mean by that? Aha! Fong Zicheng smiled and stood up. He raised his hand and placed it on the map on the table in front of Jingyu as he said, Pass through here and head straight for the enemy's rear. Ah! Jingyu lowered her head and looked at where Fong Zicheng's finger was pointing. Lastly, Fong Zicheng slowly withdrew his hand and stared at Jingyu as he said solemnly, Don't get too close to Qin Bai. Perhaps it was too late. Fong Zicheng didn't finish his sentence. His expression was serious as he turned around and walked out of the room. This series of changes stunned Jingyu. Seeing that Fong Zicheng was about to walk out of the room, she hurriedly called out, Perhaps what? What do you mean? Fong Zicheng's back as he walked away and waved his arm in reply to Jingyu. Jingyu stood in her original spot and cursed. Jingyu muttered as she sat her day. She didn't expect that just as she sat down. Hey! Quick! Where's Miracle Dr. Qingge? The commotion outside startled Jingyu, who was in the house. What's going on? It was a mess outside. Jingyu walked out of the room and saw 3 people lying on stretchers covered in blood. Her eyes narrowed as she said, Did the Tokyo and Nanli invade? No. One of the generals walked in front of Jingyu and said, The 9th Imperial Concubine. These brothers were attacked by a giant eagle. What? Jingyu was startled when she heard this. She frowned and asked the general, Eagle? Eagle? No. The general didn't seem to know how to explain. He pursed his lips and said, Today, I was leading the soldiers to train as usual. However, when we passed by a waterfall in a valley, we were suddenly attacked. That was a bird that looked like an eagle, but it was very, very big. I only took one look, and it was so big in the sky that it was at least a dozen feet long. The general seemed to have some lingering fear as he wiped the sweat off his forehead. Chapter 11:24. That giant eagle took away a tiger cub. These soldiers were injured because of that. When the general finished speaking, Jingyu's brows furrowed in a strange manner. Giant eagle? Could it be? Was it the legendary divine eagle? She must have watched too many television dramas. Jingyu's mouth twitched as she watched the 3 soldiers being carried into the house. She turned to look at the general and said, Bring me there to see what happened. Yes. The general responded and led Jingyu into the forest. When they arrived at the training grounds, they could see the waterfall hanging from the cliff in the distance. There were still traces of blood on the grass, which made Jingyu frown slightly. Ninth Imperial Concubine. That giant eagle flew from that direction, but it's gone now. The surrounding soldiers gathered around and discussed. Jingyu raised her head and looked around, but she didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Let's go up and take a look. Jingyu picked a few people and climbed up the mountain where the waterfall was. However, they didn't see anything. There were almost no holes or other traces. They only found a few skeletons by the river. Jingyu led a group of people to investigate, but they didn't find anything. They had no choice but to return. Jingyu wanted to hunt this legendary giant eagle, so she camped here for 2 to 3 days. However, she didn't even see an ordinary eagle. Jingyu's mouth twitched violently. In the end, she silently gave up. The preparations for the departure were almost done. Jingyu was busy for the past few days. Suddenly, she realized that she hadn't seen Qinbai for a long time. After asking, she found out that Qinbai had a fever and a cold. He had been resting in his room for many days. Jingyu put down what she was doing and went to Qinbai's room. However, she was surprised to see that the room was empty. Jingyu frowned slightly. Didn't they say that he was seriously ill and couldn't walk around? How could he not be in the house? Jingyu frowned slightly. She walked around Qinbai's room, but didn't see anyone. Just as Jingyu was about to turn around and leave, she vaguely saw a piece of paper on the table. Jingyu blinked and walked towards the table. Just as Jingyu was approaching the case, she heard a voice behind her. Jingyu. Jingyu immediately turned around and saw Qinbai, who was dressed in black, standing quietly behind her. This made Jingyu slightly surprised. She looked at Qinbai and said, Jingyu, you're back? I heard you're sick. Why aren't you resting in your room? Jingyu walked towards Qinbai. She didn't see the words, Operation Kill Other Pupils, written on the paper on the table. It was a little stuffy in the room, so I went out for a walk. Qinbai's eyes had a faint smile. He looked at Jingyu and said, I'm fine now. Look, Qinbai said as he turned around to show off. Jingyu's lips also curved into a faint smile. She said, It's good that you're fine. In a few days, the army will move out. I'll tell you to prepare well and pack your things. Yes, I will. Qinbai nodded slowly. He turned around and blocked Jingyu's view of the table. His expression was calm, and there was no change in his expression. Chapter 11:25. Have a good rest and get ready. I'll take my leave first. Jingyu didn't stay for long. Even though Qinbai didn't look sick, the exhaustion on his face was obvious. Jingyu chatted for a while before taking her leave. When he walked out of the room, he could vaguely hear the guard's words, It's really strange. Yesterday, he was still having a high fever. How did he get better today? Also, when did this lord go out? Why didn't I see him when I was guarding the door? Did I accidentally fall asleep? Jingyu couldn't hear the faint words clearly. Just as she was about to think about it, she saw Shangguan Linglan running over. Jingyu, the army is ready. We can set off at any time. Shangguan Linglan stood in front of Jingyu and said, Okay. Jingyu nodded and began to talk about the army. She didn't think too much about what she heard and threw it to the back of her mind. Qinbai stood in front of the window of the wooden house with his hands behind his back. He looked coldly at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan as they walked away. There was a cold glint in his eyes. He tilted his head slightly and looked at the desk. He picked up the letter and looked at its contents. He expressionlessly raised his hand and placed the letter on top of the candle. He lit it and it turned into ashes in an instant. All the preparations were completed. The late autumn weather was already very cold. In the morning, Jingyu sat on Yinfeng's back and waited quietly on a hillside. After waiting for a while, she heard shouts coming from the side. Troops arrived one after another. The first to arrive was the Cheetah Division, followed by the Wolf Division, the Tiger Division, the Mai's Cavalry, and the Lion Division were the last to arrive. Jingyu sat on Silverwind's back and watched this scene quietly. She watched as the beasts and soldiers gathered bit by bit. The corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. Finally, all the soldiers and horses gathered together under Jing Yu's waiting. They stood in an orderly manner on the hillside. Jing Yu's pitch-black eyes slowly turned into one gold and one green. That pair of bright eyes quietly looked at all the people and beasts. Everyone's gaze fell on Jing Yu. Beside Jing Yu were Jing Yu, Xing Yi, Shengwan Linglan, and the rest. They were all sitting on tigers and wolves. Jing Lang was sitting on a silver arrow and stood behind Jing Yu. Qin Bai was riding on a tiger. His pitch-black eyes looked at Jing Yu, and his expression changed slightly. Qin Ge and Fang Zicheng were sitting on top of the lion. Their bodies were somewhat stiff. Their hands were tightly holding onto the reins. As long as the lion moved, the two of them would immediately be scared to the point that they would sweat profusely. Today, they had truly learned something new. They were actually riding on lions. The two of them swallowed their saliva silently and looked at Jing Yu's back. Their hearts were in turmoil. This was the power of the otherworldly pupils. At this moment, everyone's gaze was on Jing Yu. Just when everyone was silent, they suddenly realized that there was an endless stream of tigers and wolves approaching from behind the team. They were lions and tigers, and all of them seemed to have received an order. They all followed behind the team quietly. Everyone looked at this scene with some fear. They watched as the troops grew bigger and bigger. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Just when everyone thought that it was about time, they suddenly saw the head of a giant python slowly poking out. The soldier was so shocked that he almost fell off the tiger's back. Chapter 11:26. In the blink of an eye, he saw Jing Yu's calm and smiling eyes. The soldier silently swallowed his saliva, and his body stiffened, not daring to move. More and more snakes of various sizes appeared, and the astonishment in everyone's eyes grew stronger. Many pairs of eyes stared at Jing Yu, and they saw a black snake with a scarlet forked tongue coiling around Jing Yu's body. Only then did everyone remember that Jing Yu had reared a red burial flower. Then, these snakes were also summoned by Jing Yu? When everyone thought of this, they shuddered violently and swallowed their saliva silently. These animals that were supposed to fight with each other were now living in harmony, as if they were the same kind. Jing Yu looked at the increasing number of pythons, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. It looks like everyone is here. Jing Yu slowly closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, the light in her eyes seemed to have dimmed quite a bit. Slowly, she lifted her head to look at the group, not saying anything, just a single word. Let's go. Their departure this time was so grand that the figures running wildly in the Roman forest startled countless birds. Lions and tigers traveled together. Pythons led the way, and even the humans sitting on top of the beasts were so frightening. Everyone's hearts were trembling uncontrollably, never having imagined that such a day would come. The leader of the group was so terrifying. Nan Li and Tokyo, who were far away in the forest, were completely oblivious to what was happening in the forest. It was only when they saw Jie Yi and Ling Ji enter the tent that they did so for several hours. On the plains, they could see the tents from afar. When Jing Yu had led the Wanshou army to attack, she had wanted to attack the enemy from behind, catching them off guard. That was the route that Fang Zicheng had given her. Alas, something unexpected had happened that caught Jing Yu off guard. Jing Yu had led the Wanshou army, splitting into 5 groups to surround the enemy from behind. However, 3 of the groups had not even had time to react before they were struck hard, and the first battle was declared a loss. What's going on? How could there be an ambush? Jing Yu could not understand. Their plan was almost completely secret. How did the enemy find out? Not only did they find out, but they also set up an ambush in advance? Isn't that clear enough? Fang Zicheng narrowed his eyes and said, "Obviously, it's because there are spies." Spy? As soon as Fang Zicheng finished speaking, Jing Yu's face suddenly turned cold. She suddenly thought of the time when Jing Yu was attacked. Because of this incident, Jing Yu had investigated thoroughly, but she didn't find anything. Report. The 9th Imperial Concubine. The road ahead has been blocked. Tokyo and Nan Li's troops have all been mobilized. A soldier riding a cheetah rushed in front of Jing Yu and shouted anxiously. As expected, they were prepared. Jing Yu's expression changed slightly, and she said coldly, "Gather all the troops. We will advance in a straight line." "Yes." The soldier replied respectfully, quickly turning and leaving. Jing Yu decisively chose to give up on the idea of splitting up the troops, and all the troops gathered together. Like a sharp knife, they charged out of the forest and onto the plains. From afar, they could see a sea of people, all of them holding swords and sabers. The Lion Army and Tiger Army, their ranks extremely orderly. Jing Yu stood at the front of the troops, looking quietly at a few familiar figures in the distance, causing Jing Yu's eyes to narrow. Chapter 1127. It had to be said, Jing Yu's troops were truly terrifying. That neat and orderly Wanshou army, those figures seated on their mounts. Even if they were already mentally prepared, but when they saw it for themselves, it still caused them to feel a chill run down their spines. The shock in their hearts could not be concealed, no matter how hard they tried. Two armies faced off, one side with hundreds of thousands of soldiers, the other with the Wanshou army. A thick killing intent hung in the air, ready to erupt at any moment. Jing Yu could almost recognize all the people on the other side, those figures that had been carved in her bones by Jing Yu. Those faces. How could she possibly forget them? Towards these people, Jing Yu did not even want to say a single word, viciously giving the order to kill. This battle was destined to be one where blood flowed like rivers. The bared fangs of the wild beasts, their cries, their roars, it rang out throughout the entire mountain valley. Jing Yu's wooden pipe had been fixed on nailing Yu from the start. Yin Feng's body was incomparably nimble as he scuttled to Nailan Yu's side. Jing Yu's dagger stabbed towards Nailan Yu without any hesitation. "Huh? Jing Yu, do you hate me? Do you want to kill me?" Nailan Yu looked at Jing Yu's cold, vicious eyes, her face gleaming with delight. Her lips curled up in a faint smile as she said, "Hate me then. The more you hate me, the happier I am." Jing Yu ignored Nailan Yu's words silently, the dagger in her hand stabbing towards her viciously. Nailan Yu's face flashed, and she took a step back. Jing Yu charged forwards, wanting to chase after her, but she was suddenly blocked by a black figure, the long sword in the black figure's hands slashing towards Jing Yu. Towards this person in front of her, Jing Yu was naturally no stranger. This was Nailan Yu's shadow guard. Chi! The long sword cut through Jing Yu's sleeve. Fortunately, Jing Yu dodged in time and didn't injure her skin. But this action alone made Jing Yu's face turn cold. She looked at Nailan Yu, who was standing to the side, and her eyes flashed. She raised her hand to summon Silver Arrow. Silver Arrow let out a roar and suddenly turned around to bite Nailan Yu. When the shadow guard saw that Nailan Yu was being attacked, he quickly turned around. However, how could Jing Yu allow that? She turned around and caught the shadow guard. "You want to leave? You have to ask the saber in my hand first." Jing Yu's agile body entangled him. Although she couldn't hurt him, she could still entangle him. The shadow guard was tied down by Jing Yu. On the other side, Silver Arrow didn't leave Nailan Yu any mercy. What made Jing Yu even happier was that after a while, Silver Wind also rushed over. How could Nailan Yu deal with two gray wolves? At this moment, he was already in a sorry state. The shadow guard wanted to go over, but Jing Yu was too tightly wrapped around him. If he was distracted, there would be another wound on his body, so the shadow guard couldn't do anything else. Trash! Hurry up and save this young lady. Nailan Yu's originally clean and tidy clothes were now like a crazy woman as she dodged the two gray wolves. It was really hard for her to resist, so she quickly called out for help. A cold light flashed in Jing Yu's eyes. Seeing that the shadow guard was about to turn around, Nailan Yu's dagger suddenly slashed towards his neck. The shadow guard suddenly retreated, and with this retreat, he was even further away from Jing Yu. Chapter 1128. When Nailan Yu saw this scene, she immediately jumped up in exasperation. Her eyes were filled with anger. "Jing Yu, I'm telling you, If you kill me, you will regret it. Nalan Yue miserably dodged as she angrily roared. Is that so? I don't care. When Jing Yu heard Nalan Yue's words, the corners of her mouth curled up into a mocking smile. She was completely unmoved as she loudly said, Silver arrow, silver wind. Bite her to death. Ah! Nalan Yue's face was almost scratched by the wolf as she cried out in alarm. Her eyes were filled with fear. Jing Yu, don't you want to know where Xiao Chun is? Nalan Yue abruptly shouted. Jing Yu's hand, which was originally thrusting out, immediately shifted to the side. The expression on her face slightly changed. There was a slight change. Chi! The shadow guard's long sword once again slashed across Jing Yu's waist, cutting her clothes and causing a faint trace of blood to seep out. When Nalan Yue saw this scene, her eyes slightly lit up. She proudly said, I knew you would want to know. Huh? If I told you that Xiao Chun isn't dead, would you be very happy? Nalan Yue dodged the silver arrow and the silver wind attack. She slightly gasped for breath as she proudly said this. That fake corpse was made by you. A cold light appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. She turned her head to look at Nalan Yue and stopped what she was doing. The shadow guard's wish was fulfilled as he jumped to Nalan Yue's side. However, Nalan Yue glared at him with incomparable disgust. She turned her eyes to Jing Yu and narrowed her eyes as she said, So you already discovered that the corpse was fake? Where's Xiao Chun? Jing Yu slowly took a step forward. A pair of strange-colored eyes stared fiercely at Nalan Yue as she asked, Xiao Chun? Naturally, he's in my hands. Nalan Yue's lips curled up into a faint smile as she said, Right now, Xiao Chun is already one of my people. He is with me and has obediently submitted to me. You fucking bullshit. Jing Yu's eyes suddenly filled with anger as she suddenly charged towards Nalan Yue. Jing Yu probably didn't notice that in this chaotic battle, there was a silent change that was happening. The soldiers that were approaching Jing Yu step by step looked very normal. However, the eyes of these soldiers flashed with a very different light. Ha! Nalan Yu looked at Jing Yu's angry face, and her heart was filled with joy. She narrowed her eyes and said, Do you know what Xiao Chun looks like now? He's like a dog, kneeling at my feet and allowing me to ravage him. I'll torture him. I'll torture him as hard as I can. Nalan Yue's words were like a curse that echoed in Jing Yu's mind. In a place where Jing Yu couldn't see, Nalan Yue's fingers that were hanging by her side slightly moved. A cool breeze blew by, and Nalan Yue's fingers slowly loosened. Vaguely, it seemed as if something was blown by the wind towards Jing Yu. Jing Yu unconsciously inhaled it. Nalan Yue, I'm going to kill you. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with anger. Hearing Nalan Yue's words, she could almost imagine how Xiao Chun had been humiliated. How could such a noble man endure it? Thinking of this, Jing Yu was so angry that she wanted to kill someone. This kind of anger seemed to be uncontrollable as it violently attacked Jing Yu. Jing Yu didn't even notice that someone was slowly approaching her side. Chapter 1129. What? You don't believe me? Do you want me to show you what Xiao Chun looks like? Nalan Yu's gaze was fixed on Jing Yu, as if she was very happy. Look, that's your 9th emperor's. Jing Yu slowly turned her head to look. In the crowd, there was a person locked in a small iron cage. His black clothes were already dyed red and black by the blood. There was a chain around his neck. Because the cage was too small, he had no choice but to kneel in the cage. His head was slightly raised, revealing half of his face. Jing Yu couldn't be more familiar with it. The moment she saw this person, Jing Yu's eyes widened, and her face was filled with disbelief. The eyes of the person locked in the iron cage seemed to be unable to focus. After looking in a daze for a long time, he finally saw Jing Yu in the distance. His eyes flashed with surprise, and his eyes widened slightly. The moment Jing Yu saw Xiao Chun's figure, her entire body stiffened. However, when she met his eyes, Jing Yu's tightened heart suddenly stopped. No, he wasn't Xiao Chun. This thought was so clear that Jing Yu almost instantly came to this conclusion. The person locked in the iron cage wasn't Xiao Chun. Although they had the same face, this person wasn't him. Because in his eyes, she wasn't there. But without a doubt, Jingyu could clearly feel that this Xiao Chun recognized her. There was a hint of anxiousness in his eyes, as if he wanted to say something to Jingyu. He opened his mouth slightly, but didn't have the strength to speak. Nailing you, this was your plan? Jingyu's mouth hooked up into a cold smile. Step by step, she walked towards nailing you. She really wanted to know who the person who was pretending to be Xiao Chun was and what Nailing Yu's goal was. Nailing Yu saw Jingyu's actions, and her face turned cold. She stared at Jingyu and asked, "What do you mean by that?" "What do I mean?" Jingyu's eyes narrowed. Her eyes were filled with ridicule as she said disdainfully, "You can't be thinking that that man is really Xiao Chun, right? Do you think you can fool me with such a retarded trick?" "What?" Nailing Yu's eyes suddenly widened. She stared at Jingyu in disbelief and asked, "What did you say? This person isn't Xiao Chun?" "Ha ha." Jingyu laughed loudly and said, "You thought you were treating Xiao Chun, but you don't know that the person you're treating is not Xiao Chun." "No, that's impossible." Nailing Yu suddenly shouted out, "What? You still don't believe me?" Jingyu's mouth hooked up into a cold and arrogant smile as she said, "If you don't believe me, then bring him out and see if that face of his is real or fake." "Jingyu, do you think I'll fall for your trick?" When Nailing Yu heard Jingyu's words, her face turned cold. She seemed to have thought of something as she looked at Jingyu with ridicule. Jingyu heard Nailing Yu's words and couldn't help but laugh. "Ha ha, coward." Jingyu's eyes were filled with ridicule as she looked at Nailing Yu and said, "Xiao Chun isn't in your hands, then. I don't have to worry about killing you. Silver arrow, silver wind." "Stop. Jingyu, you really don't care about Xiao Chun's life?" Nailing Yu saw Jingyu's actions and was so shocked that she retreated. Chapter 1130. Idiot. Jingyu scolded with an expressionless face. She charged forward, the dagger in her hand, stabbing viciously towards Jingyu. Nailing Yu had originally thought that Jingyu was just putting on an act, but she didn't expect that Jingyu was actually serious. It was a good thing that the shadow guard blocked Jingyu's attack in time. Nailing Yu took a deep breath and turned her head to look at the person in the iron cage. She suddenly had some doubts in her heart. No wonder she wasn't willing to speak. Could it be that this Xiao Chun was actually a fake? However, she was the one who had locked up Xiao Chun with her own hands and brought him back. Furthermore, she had kept a close watch on him. How could he be a fake? What was going on here? Nailing Yu's mind was in a mess. She clenched her fists tightly and turned around to walk towards the iron cage. She didn't hesitate to drag out Xiao Chun from the iron cage. Although Jingyu was fighting with the shadow guard, she had been paying attention to Nailing Yu's actions. When she saw that Xiao Chun being dragged out of the iron cage by Nailing Yu, Jingyu suddenly turned her body and stood up. Without any hesitation, she charged towards the person that Nailing Yu was holding on to. Why was Jingyu so reckless? She knew that it wasn't Xiao Chun, but she still charged over. The reason was simple, because when Xiao Chun opened his mouth, although he didn't say anything, Jingyu could clearly read his lips. He had called out, "Madam." In this world, the only person who would call her madam was Xing Er and Xing Yi. Xing Er was fighting with the enemy not far away. As for Xing Yi, he had disappeared with Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun's body was fake. It wasn't hard to guarantee that Xing Yi wasn't dead. Xing Yi was probably the only person who knew about Xiao Chun's whereabouts. No matter what, Jingyu would definitely save him. Jingyu's eyes were filled with determination. She turned around to break away from the battle and rushed over without hesitation. The Shadow Guardian's pupils shrank slightly. He had no time to stop Jingyu and was entangled by two gray wolves on both sides. Jingyu's eyes flashed with a cold, killing intent as she charged towards Nailing Yu. It was getting closer and closer. When that Xiao Chun saw Jingyu rushing over, a look of fear appeared in his eyes. Almost instantly, he shouted, "Madam, don't come any closer." That voice was hoarse and ear-piercing, but Jingyu could tell in a second that this voice belonged to Xing Yi. Nailing Yu saw Jingyu's figure rushing over. Not only did she not dodge, the corners of her mouth even curled up into a sinister smile. That smile made Jing Yu's hair stand on end. In that instant, she finally sensed a strong killing intent coming towards her. Girl with different pupils. Stay. An old voice exploded in Jing Yu's ears. Jing Yu's body, which was rushing over, couldn't dodge due to inertia. She could only use all her strength to shift her body. However, even if she managed to shift her vital parts, it was only by a few centimeters. Almost at the instant when Jing Yu's figure stopped moving, she suddenly felt a surge of qi and blood in her chest, and a palm struck her back fiercely. Puff! Jing Yu rolled on the ground pathetically and landed on the grass. She raised her hand to cover her aching chest and suddenly looked up. She saw the Holy Family's third elder, Jie Yi, standing on the grass. His face was filled with a cold light. Chapter 1131. Damn it! Jing Yu raised a hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. Just as she was about to retreat, she suddenly realized that so many people had surrounded her at some point. Archers were flying straight at her from the distance. Jing Yu was so shocked that she rolled on the ground to avoid them, looking battered and exhausted. The people around her all drew their swords and attacked Jing Yu. Only then did Jing Yu realize that these people weren't ordinary soldiers at all. Every move they made was from the Holy Family and the Poison Sect. Nailin Yu stood to the side with a dazzling smile on her face. Jing Yu's eyes were filled with a cold light. She turned and wanted to rush out, but she was blocked again and again. Yin Jian and Yin Feng had already rushed to Jing Yu's side. Their cold fangs and eyes were filled with cold light as they guarded Jing Yu and stared at the people surrounding her. It turned out that Jing Yu had been completely surrounded without her noticing. The people around her had been replaced by others. Jing Yu slowly looked around and suppressed the pain in her chest. The only thing she could do now was to fight head-on. Girl with different pupils, don't struggle for no reason. Jie Yi's cold eyes looked at Jing Yu as she spoke. Teach. Jing Yu snorted disdainfully. She tightened her grip on the dagger in her hand and looked at Jie Yi. You want to catch me? Let's see if you have the ability. Stubborn. Jie Yi snorted and waved her hand. The people around her immediately surrounded Jing Yu. The battle here was a mess, and Yin Jian and Yin Feng's bodies were covered in wounds. Jing Yu's strength was falling short of her desire. It was at this moment that a hole was torn in the originally solid encirclement. Jing Yu, come here quickly, a familiar voice called out to her. Jing Yu raised her head slightly and saw Qin Bai fighting with all his might. He was moving towards her with great difficulty. A glimmer of light appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. Looking at Qin Bai's appearance, there was a hint of joy in her eyes. Looking at Qin Bai like this suddenly reminded her of her previous life. There were countless times when Qin Bai was like this. When she was powerless, he would always rush in and save her. A faint smile appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. She mustered the last of her strength and rushed in the direction of Qin Bai. Yin Jian and Yin Feng were leading the way. There was still some distance between them. If Jing Yu wanted to rush over, Jie Yi should be a big obstacle. However, she didn't expect that Jing Yu could rush over so easily and quickly. This situation stunned Jing Yu for a moment. Her eyes were filled with doubt. Jing Yu, Qin Bai's anxious voice called out. Jing Yu rushed towards Qin Bai. Just as she was approaching, she suddenly saw a black figure rushing towards Jing Yu. That long sword, which was suffused with a cold light, slashed towards Jing Yu's waist. Jing Yu twisted her body forcefully and threw herself into Qin Bai's arms. At this moment, Jing Yu thought that she was safe. Jing Yu opened her eyes and looked towards the black figure that had just rushed over. The moment she looked, her entire body stiffened. The woman standing in the crowd was dressed in black and held a long sword in her hand. Jing Yu was very familiar with that cold face. That was Lingji. It was the bodyguard who followed Qin Bai. Why? Why did that bodyguard want to kill her? Chapter 1132. Jing Yu, I'm sorry. Qin Bai's calm voice rang in Jing Yu's ears. Before Jing Yu could process what was going on, she saw Qin Bai's hand slowly covering Jing Yu's eyes. Ah! The powder on Qin Bai's palm entered Jing Yu's eyes. She suddenly felt as if she was being burned by fire, and Jing Yu's eyes were burning fiercely. Cries of pain rang out. The earth-shattering cries seemed to resound throughout the battlefield. At this moment, the pain in her heart was even more intense than the pain in her eyes. Qin Bai slowly released his hand, and Jing Yu fell onto the grass. It felt as if lava had flowed into her eyes. Jing Yu's screams attracted the attention of the surrounding people. The burning pain in her heart made Jing Yu roll on the ground. Jing Yu's entire body was trembling. The burning pain in her eyes made Jing Yu unable to speak. She bit her lips so hard that they were almost torn apart. They were covered in scarlet blood, and her vision was a little blurry. Jing Yu trembled as she opened her eyes and looked towards Qin Bai. Qin Bai was standing in front of Jing Yu with his hands clasped behind his back. A pair of pitch-black eyes were cold and emotionless. A face that Jing Yu was very familiar with. Jing Yu trembled as she looked at Qin Bai. Her heart was trembling violently. Why? This was the last question that Jing Yu asked in an extremely weak voice. It was as if she was making her final struggle. High Priestess. Jie slowly walked in front of Qin Bai and bowed respectfully in front of him. Jing Yu heard Jie Yi's words clearly. That question was like a loud slap to her face. High Priest of the Holy Family, you're right. Qin Bai nodded slightly at Jie Yi before turning his head to look at Jing Yu. At this moment, Qin Bai no longer had the calm and gentle appearance he had before. His aura was extraordinary, and the noble aura that surrounded him made Jing Yu tremble all over. From the very beginning, I approached you with a goal in mind. Qin Bai walked towards Jing Yu step by step. He looked down at Jing Yu and said, "From the moment you saved me in the forest, you had already planned this. Jing Yu, have you forgotten?" Qin Bai's eyes were deep and calm. He said slowly, "I am the High Priest of the Holy Family. I peek into the secrets of heaven and predict the future. In this world, there is no past or future that I can't see." Qin Bai looked down at Jing Yu and said, "Only the Holy Family's future I can't see through. And now, there is your past and future that I can't see through. In order to see your past, the Holy Family's treasure was almost destroyed. Fortunately, I was able to see some of it." Qin Bai squatted down slowly. He looked at Jing Yu and said, "Why do you have two pasts?" "Huh?" Jing Yu heard Qin Bai's words. Her eyes were filled with laughter. For some reason, Jing Yu wanted to laugh so much at this moment. However, there is one thing that is real. Qin Bai looked down at Jing Yu's hand. He said coldly and calmly, "This is the secret technique of the Holy Family. You should have been my fiancé. This is my mark. But you are an evil person. You are destined to die in this world." Qin Bai smiled coldly and said, "Living and dying together is the most noble vow of the Holy Family. How can you deserve it? You are right. Everything is a conspiracy and a lie." Chapter 1133. Originally, I thought that it would take some effort to deceive you, but who would have thought? It was just an illusory face, and you would unconditionally believe me. Qin Bai slowly raised his hand and touched his face, as if he was strangely whispering. "But why does the person in your memory have the same face as me? It saves me a lot of trouble." Qin Bai slowly stood up and looked down at Jing Yu. "It's all fake." Jing Yu's heart was fiercely trembling as she looked at the mark on her finger that was slowly disappearing. All the things that she had experienced before caused Jing Yu's heart to fiercely tremble. Because of Qin Bai, she had actually quarreled with Xiao Chun again and again. Why was it like this? Jing Yu's finger was fiercely trembling. At this moment, the surrounding sounds seemed to have disappeared, and Jing Yu couldn't hear anything. All the things that she had experienced before seemed to be completely clear at this moment, and disappeared along with the mark on her finger. It was as if something that was binding Jing Yu also disappeared along with it. All the things that Qin Bai had done before, from saving her in the forest, to searching for the silver arrow, to all the things that couldn't be explained in the cave, seemed to have become incomparably clear at this moment. Within Jinling City, Qin Bai intentionally or unintentionally approached. Lu Miaoqiu's words seemed to be clearly echoing in his ears at this moment. During the battle outside the pond, Qinbai clearly could have restrained Nailan Yu, and clearly there was no need for him to block the sword for her. All of this, from the beginning, was a carefully planned trap. Qinbai's occasional absent-mindedness in the forest, the letter on the table, the ambush today, finally, everything was clear. Everything was so clear. High Priestess, what do we do now? Ling Ji slowly stood behind Qinbai. Jie Yi also stood next to Qinbai, slightly bowing her head as she asked. The person with the different pupils is a matter of our holy family. Bring her back to the holy family and execute her. Qinbai's voice was indifferent and cold, as if there were no other fluctuations in his voice. Ha! Nailan Yu on the side laughed out loud. She covered her mouth as she looked at Qinbai and said, High Priestess is truly capable. High Priestess actually did something that we couldn't do, but High Priestess actually managed to do it so beautifully. However, our poison sect also contributed in capturing Jingyu, right? Isn't it inappropriate for the High Priest to take him away? As Nailan Yu's words fell, Qinbai's gaze slowly shifted to Nailan Yu. His eyes were filled with ridicule as he said, Do you have any objections? His pitch-black eyes were filled with an incomparably cold light. Just this gaze caused the smile on Nailan Moon's face to stiffen and her heart to tighten. She lowered her eyes to look at Jingyu, who had fallen to the ground. Her heart was filled with unwillingness. But under Qinbai's gaze, Nailan Yu didn't even dare to say a single word of rebuttal. Jingyu's burning gaze grew stronger and stronger. Because of Jingyu's collapse, the situation on the battlefield changed. The tigers and wolves that were originally obeying orders were now in chaos. The soldiers who had been sitting on the backs of the lions were also thrown off. In the chaos, someone finally noticed the situation on Jingyu's side. However, the reason Jingyu had rushed over to attack them was because of these wild beasts. Now that the wild beasts had lost control, the soldiers could only retreat. These lions and wolves didn't care about who was the enemy and just bit randomly. Chapter 1134. Jingyu's vision became more and more blurry. At this moment, the connection between Jingyu and the beasts in her mind seemed to have broken. She could no longer feel the emotions of the beasts. Jingyu's heart was trembling violently. She desperately wanted to open her eyes, desperately wanted to see the battle in front of her clearly. She desperately wanted to control the beasts, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't do it. The beasts were roaring. Jingyu's gaze fell weakly on Yin Jian and Yin Feng. At this moment, Jingyu felt that her family had suddenly become so unfamiliar. Originally, she could clearly feel the emotions of Yin Jian and Yin Feng in her mind. But at this moment, they were incomparably weak, as if they could break at any moment. That feeling of powerlessness caused Jingyu's eyes to be covered with a layer of mist. Why? Why did it have to be like this? Jingyu's gaze looked towards Qinbai and Nailan Yu. It was all because of them. It was all because of these people. So hateful, so unreconciled. Jingyu's eyes were about to close. Her vision became more and more blurry, and the clamor in her ears became incomparably clear. At the moment when Jingyu was about to close her eyes, she didn't know what kind of emotion she was feeling or what year it was. At this moment, Jingyu was like a dying person struggling for the last time. Her strange colored eyes suddenly widened, and she looked at Nailan Yu with incomparable ferocity. The dense killing intent in her eyes was enough to cause one's heart to palpitate. The last thought in her mind was to let Yin Jian and Yin Feng kill Nailan Yu. The two gray wolves fiercely jumped up without any warning, their sharp fangs and claws pouncing towards Nailan Yu. Nailan Yu was stunned by this sudden action. The shadow guards beside her should have made a move, but Nailan Yu seemed to have gone crazy. She actually stretched out her hand and fiercely pulled the shadow guard aside, directly blocking Yin Jian's claws with his body. Slash! An incomparably clear sound was heard. Nailan Yu didn't hesitate to pull the shadow guard's body, blocking Yin Jian's claws. She hid behind him, Jian's cold claws directly slashed Jian's face, spreading from his neck to his chest. The fresh blood dyed his eyes red. Are you trash? Nalan Yu's eyes were filled with fear. The claws had almost slashed her face. Nalan Yu was probably quite angry. She lifted her leg and kicked Jian's knee. Jian suddenly knelt on one knee on the ground and tightened his grip on the blade in his hand. Jing Yu's vision was completely blurred, and the only trace of connection between her and Jian and Feng had been completely severed. Jing Yu's body fell down powerlessly at this moment. Her eyelids drooped, and everyone in front of her, everything became a blur. Jing Yu didn't know if it was her misconception, but the moment she fell down, Jing Yu seemed to have seen a figure riding on a tall horse in the distant crowd. That black robe was so familiar. She seemed to have seen that familiar face, and she seemed to have seen those pitch-black eyes. She saw the anxiety in those eyes, the passion in those eyes, and the pity in those eyes. In this world, there was no second person who would look at her with those eyes. Xiao Chun. Perhaps it was her final dream, but at this moment, Jing Yu's thoughts were filled with sorrow. Chapter 1135. Xiao Chun, I really want to see you again. Jing Yu's vision fell into complete darkness, and the sound in her ears faded away. It was as if she had sunk into an endless abyss, and she was constantly falling. She couldn't see the edge of the abyss, and she couldn't see anything. She just kept falling. Jing Yu seemed to have had a very, very long dream. In the dream, they were still living in the Tokyo Imperial City. Jing Yu had nothing to do every day, and she would wander around the various restaurants and shops. Sometimes, she would happily bring Shangguan Linglan and Lu Miaoqiu to extort lunch from Fang Ziqing. In the prince's mansion, they would cook extremely unpalatable food and force Xiao Chun to eat it. Xiao Chun would always be kind enough to reward Xing Yi and Xing Er with food. Looking at their tearless faces, Jing Yu smiled like a child. Or when she was alone with Xiao Chun, whispering sweet nothings to him. Those days, Xiao Chun. The corners of Jing Yu's eyes were moist, and her eyelashes trembled slightly. She slowly opened her eyes, and all she could see was darkness. There wasn't the slightest bit of light, and it was so dark that it was somewhat frightening. Jing Yu blinked her eyes, but there wasn't the slightest bit of light. It was all pitch black. You are... Jing Yu heard Jing Lang's voice, and there was a hint of surprise in his voice. Big brother, why didn't you light the lamp? Jing Yu's mind went blank for a moment, and she unconsciously said this sentence. The air seemed to freeze for a moment, and the surroundings seemed to become quiet. Jing Yu's body stiffened slightly, and she raised her hand in front of her eyes. As if she had sensed something, she supported herself with her hand and sat up. She could feel Jing Lang's hand reaching over to help Jing Yu up. You're... Jing Lang looked at Jing Yu's calm face and called out again. I know. Jing Yu lowered her head and said, I'm blind. The moment Jing Yu said that, everyone in the room almost stopped breathing. The sun was shining brightly outside the window, and the sky was bright. It was daytime now, but Jing Yu asked why they didn't light the lamps. How could they answer in such a situation? Ninth sister-in-law. Qin Gu walked up slowly and sat down beside Jing Yu. He frowned and said, Your eyes are like this because they were burned by medicine. Don't worry, I'll return to Miracle Physician Valley tomorrow and get my master to prescribe the antidote. Your eyes will definitely be cured. It's not just blindness. Jing Yu acted as if she didn't hear Qin Ji's words. She raised her hand slightly and touched her eyes. She said, My pupils are gone, right? The atmosphere in the room fell silent once again. Everyone looked at Jing Yu's dark eyes and lowered their heads without any emotion. How long have I been asleep? Jing Yu seemed to have thought of something. She frowned slightly and asked, How's the battle? Is everyone still there? Everyone is fine. Jing Lang seemed to have thought of something. There was a hint of surprise in his voice as he said, We were all saved by the 9th Emperors. The 9th Emperors didn't die. He's back. Boom. The moment Jing Lang's words fell, Jing Yu's mind went blank. She stared blankly at a place where the sound came from. Her face was filled with joy. She looked at Jing Lang and asked, "Where's Xiao Chun? Where's Xiao Chun?" So, it wasn't an illusion. Chapter 1136. Xiao Chun stood there, allowing Jing Yu to trace his face with her hands. "Xiao Chun, it's really you? It's not a dream." Jing Yu's lips curled into a happy and relieved expression. Her heart was trembling so obviously. "It's me." Xiao Chun lowered his eyes slightly and grabbed Jing Yu's hand as if he was sighing. The warmth from his palm was so moving that even though she couldn't see it, Jing Yu could still feel the scorching warmth. "You're still alive. You're finally back. Xiao Chun, you're finally back." Jing Yu hugged Xiao Chun tightly once again, her voice filled with joy and gratitude. Xiao Chun sat down on the bed with Jing Yu in his arms. He listened to Jing Yu speak and repeated Jing Yu's words over and over again. "I'm back. Everything's fine now." It was a peaceful afternoon. Everyone outside the house looked at the tightly shut door and sighed deeply. They finally felt relieved. Shengguan Linglan ran over without even taking off his armor. He looked at the tightly shut door and listened to the soft chatter coming from inside the house. This was the first time he felt so relaxed. However, after feeling relaxed, his face darkened once again. "Linglan." Xing Er walked over slowly and stood beside Shengguan Linglan. He saw that Shanghai Linglan didn't even wipe off the blood splattered on his face. Instead, he raised his hand naturally and wiped off the blood on Shengguan Linglan's face. "Air!" Shengguan Linglan's body stiffened slightly. He blinked his eyes and looked at Xing Er. He turned his head away shyly and raised his hand to wipe his face carelessly. "Master is back. It's fine." Xing Er seemed to know what Shengguan Linglan was thinking and pursed his lips slightly. "And?" Shengguan Linglan lowered his head and responded. Shengguan Linglan could not imagine what would have happened if Xiao Chun had not come. Jing Yu would have been blinded, and she would have been taken away by the Holy Family. The beasts would have gone out of control, and the battlefield would have turned into a slaughterhouse. If Xiao Chun had not come back, the situation would have gone out of control. Shengguan Linglan lowered his eyes and sighed deeply. Fortunately, Xiao Chun had returned. "So the person I saw before I fainted was really you." In the room, Jing Yu leaned against Xiao Chun's chest. She didn't want to leave him for even a moment. She just wanted to hold Xiao Chun's hand tightly and never let go. "Yes." Xiao Chun hugged Jing Yu with one hand and let Jing Yu hold the other. He lowered his eyes and looked at Jing Yu and nodded slightly. "If it weren't for Helian Theo and Yi Shui's help this time, perhaps my arrival would have been in vain." Xiao Chun's calm voice echoed in Jing Yu's ears. He said calmly, "Helian Theo is now the king of the northern pastoral world." It was destined from the start. When Jing Yu heard that Helian Xiu had become the emperor, she didn't feel any surprise. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Xiao Chun told Jing Yu everything that had happened after that. It turned out that Xiao Chun had almost died at that time. Fortunately, that arrow had pierced Xiao Chun's heart. However, the moment the arrow flew over, Xiao Chun moved his body to the side, and the arrow did not pierce his heart. After that, Xiao Chun was indeed taken away. However, he was replaced by someone else. "What did you say?" Jing Yu held Jing Yu's hand tightly. She stared at Jing Yu and said, "That shadow guard by Nailan Yu's side let you go?" "Yes." Xiao Chun nodded slowly and said, "I don't know why, but he did replace me. Xing Yi stayed by Nailan Yu's side and pretended to be me. After I escaped, I was saved by Yi Shui." Chapter 1137. After that, he joined forces with the disciples of Nether Sect and went to the Northern Pastoral with Mu Yu to help Helian Theo seize the throne. "In return, he helped me at this time," Xiao Chun said slowly. When Jing Yu heard Xiao Chun's words, she understood the general situation. No wonder this battle ended so quickly. If it wasn't for Yi Shui, those beasts wouldn't have been able to be controlled. "Why is Yi Shui here? Did you find White Nine?" Jing Yu asked with a frown. "Not yet." Xiao Chun sighed and said, Yishui said that she was chasing after news of White Nine, but she couldn't find him. Jingyu frowned when she heard this. Then, as if she had thought of something, she suddenly turned around. Even though she couldn't see Xiao Chun, she fiercely raised her hand and slapped Xiao Chen's chest. She roared, "You bastard, you clearly didn't die, so why didn't you send a message back? Do you know that I thought you were dead? I thought you didn't want me anymore. I thought you left me all alone in this world. Xiao Chun, how could you be so heartless? You bastard." As Jingyu spoke, her eyes were once again covered with a layer of mist. "If I didn't do this, how could I let you see Qin Bai's ambition?" Xiao Chun gently hugged Jingyu. "I've investigated. All of this is Qin Bai's scheme," Xiao Chun said as he slowly raised his hand and grabbed Jingyu's hand. His eyes were cold as he said, "The so-called mark is actually a kind of witchcraft. It can easily control a person's heart through touch or smell." Xiao Chun sighed deeply and said, "If I didn't do this, you would trust Qin Bai even more, and our relationship would get worse and worse." Witchcraft. Jingyu unconsciously rubbed her fingers. So that's how it is. No wonder. Qin Bai gave her a very familiar feeling, but no matter what, she could not get close to him. He was very close, but Jingyu's heart had a strange feeling of resistance. It turned out that from the very beginning, Jingyu fell into his trap. After that, Qin Bai deliberately tried to get close to her. When Xiao Chun was here, Jingyu didn't notice it, but when he wasn't here, no matter what Jingyu was doing, Qin Bai was always there. Even if he didn't speak, he would always stand by her side. That unfamiliar smell. Jingyu clenched her fists tightly. If it wasn't for Qin Bai, if it wasn't for the mischief in her previous life, Xiao Chun wouldn't have died. It was all her fault. It was all her fault. Jingyu slowly lowered her head. From the very beginning, he had planned for Jingyu. Because of Qin Bai's face and everything in the cave, Jingyu would let go of the first line of defense in her heart. After that, there would be all kinds of contact and all kinds of empty words. Jingyu actually thought that Qin Bai was the reincarnation of number 9, just like her. But that wasn't the case. From the beginning, Qin Bai had been trying to cover up what he said. He had never been honest. Everything was fake. It was just a scheme that had been planned for a long time. It was a trap that trapped all her thoughts and made Jingyu follow his plan step by step. Therefore, she stepped closer without realizing it. "Jingyu." Xiao Chun raised his hand and stroked Jingyu's hair. He lowered his eyes slightly and said, "I underestimated Qin Bai. If I had arrived a moment earlier, your eyes..." Chapter 1138. Xiao Chen's words were filled with self-blame. Jingyu's eyes narrowed, and she slowly lowered her gaze. "I didn't think that Qin Bai would be the high priest of the Holy Family." Xiao Chen tightened his grip on Jingyu's hand. He frowned and said, "If I had thought of that, I wouldn't have wasted so much time." "Your eyes, I'm fine." Jingyu raised her head and looked at Xiao Chun in the darkness. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "I don't have abnormal pupils. Isn't that what I've always wanted?" Xiao Chun slowly fell silent. He lowered his gaze and looked at Jingyu's faint smile. He didn't say anything. He simply raised his hand and pulled Jingyu into his embrace. Xiao Chen's return was undoubtedly great news. However, Jingyu's blindness was also a pain in everyone's heart. Jingyu had just woken up and her chest was still a little stuffy. It was obvious that Jie Yi's slap had injured Jingyu. Jingyu didn't want Xiao Chun to leave no matter what. She stubbornly held on to Xiao Chen's hand and fell asleep. The tip of her nose was surrounded by a familiar scent. This scent was so reassuring that Jingyu fell asleep. When she woke up again, it was already the morning of the next day. "Xiao Chun." Jingyu suddenly woke up and cried out in alarm. "I'm here." Xiao Chun reached out and hugged Jingyu. His heart ached when he saw the panicked expression on her face. Jingyu heard Xiao Chen's voice, and only then did she tightly hug Xiao Chen's hand. Her panicked heart slowly relaxed. "I thought everything that happened yesterday was just a dream." Jingyu seemed to sigh as she finally felt at ease at this moment. Xiao Chen didn't say anything. He just quietly hugged Jingyu. Jingyu woke up to eat. This was the first time she was served by Xiao Chun. For some reason, she felt that there were benefits to being blind. The structure of Jing Yu's brain wasn't something that normal people could understand. Qinggu, are you saying that I can still see? Jing Yu's mood recovered a lot because of Xiao Chen's return. Jing Yu sat down on the table and blinked as she asked Qinggu. Of course. Qinggu nodded seriously and said, your eyes were blinded because of the drug. However, it didn't hurt your core, so it can be cured. However, I can't do it right now. I have to go back to Miracle Physician Valley. The antidote is with my master, Qinggu said as he looked around at everyone. Phew. Fortunately, it can be cured. Jing Yu sighed deeply and said, then I'll have to trouble you, Qinggu. No problem, no problem, Qinggu replied as he waved his hand. All right, how is Xingyi now? Jing Yu frowned slightly. Xingyi's situation was extremely troublesome when she saw Jing Yu on the battlefield. Now that Xiao Chun and Qinggu were here, there shouldn't be any problems, right? That's what I'm going to say next. Qinggu sighed deeply and said, Xingyi's injuries are quite troublesome. There are countless toxins in his body. I can't imagine what Xingyi suffered at Nailan Yu's hands. Qingyi's fist fiercely slammed on the table. His eyes were filled with anger as he said, the antidote that I can make is very limited. Xingyi's body has countless types of toxins. Although they aren't fatal, they can make people suffer from constant pain. Chapter 1139. Nailan Yu. When Jing Yu heard Qingyi's words, the image of Xingyi being humiliated and imprisoned in a metal cage appeared in her mind. She clenched her fists tightly. Xingyi has countless wounds on his body. It's not hard to tell that he was whipped countless times. How could a woman be so cruel and merciless? Even if I killed her 1,000,000 times, it wouldn't be enough to quench the hatred in my heart. Qinggu was truly angered this time. He clenched his fists tightly and said, then Xingyi is now. Jing Yu's heart tightened slightly as she pursed her lips and asked, I want to bring Xingyi back to Miracle Physician Valley for treatment. Qinggu let out a deep breath and said, if I don't do this, I won't be able to save Xingyi. Okay. Jing Yu nodded slowly. Qinggu. When Xiao Chen heard this, he frowned slightly and said, it's too dangerous for you to go alone. Let you and Minuan escort you there. That's good too. The journey is long, and I need someone to take care of me. Qinggu nodded slightly and agreed. When do you plan to leave? Xiao Chen frowned and asked Qinggu. Xingyi can't move yet because of his injuries. We'll leave in a few days when his injuries are better. Qinggu looked at Xiao Chen and slowly agreed. When Jing Yu heard this, she nodded in agreement. Then, Xiao Chen supported her as they went to check on Xingyi. Xingyi had been unconscious ever since they returned. Helian Xiao and Mu Yu arrived with their troops. Now everyone was stationed in Jinling Town in their original houses. Jinling Town was built at the border, at the edge of the forest. In order to prevent wild beasts or enemy troops, the surrounding walls were built very high when it was built. It was a good place to defend, easy to defend but hard to attack. Although they had Yi Shui's help this time, it was only to help them escape. Tokyo and Nanli were not affected at all. Moreover, the Cebu's troops were watching from afar. Cebu seemed to be watching from afar, but he didn't do anything. No one knew what he was trying to do. Jing Yu felt uneasy, but there was nothing she could do. After Jing Yu returned, the Tokyo and Nanli launched a few strong attacks, but they were all blocked. Yi Shui's beast-taming ability had a drawback, so she couldn't participate in the battle for too long. Fortunately, after a few sieges, there was no follow-up. In Jinling Town, after sending off Qinggu and Xingyi, Jing Yu was lying on Xiao Chen's lap leisurely, eating the food Xiao Chen passed to her. Jing Yu was eating happily when an earth-shattering shout came. Here! Jing Yu jumped up in shock. You're slacking off again. Shangguan Linglan was enraged by Jing Yu's behavior. He glared at Jing Yu and said, you said you wanted to practice your hearing and reflexes. This? Jing Yu rubbed her nose and looked at the sky speechlessly. Swear to God, she really did it on a whim. Wasn't he blind? In order to make herself not so weak, Jingyu was very excited at the time and said that she would practice her hearing and reaction. Even if she encountered danger or something, it would not be a big problem. After all, who knew how long it would take for Qingge to go back and forth? Shangguan Linglan was enraged by Jingyu's behavior and shouted angrily, "Do you still want to practice?" Chapter 1140. He had originally thought that Jingyu was finally working hard, so he had excitedly become Jingyu's coach. But in the end, look at Jingyu. She was seizing the opportunity to get close to Xiao Chun. "Xiao Chun, hurry up and leave. Leave." Shangguan Linglan pushed Xiao Chun away in disgust. Jingyu opened her mouth to scream, but before she could speak, Shangguan Linglan dragged her away. "Do you still want to recover? Do you still want to practice? What if you encounter an assassination or danger? Tell me, what are you going to do?" Shangguan Linglan shouted angrily at Jingyu. "This, that." Jingyu lowered her head helplessly and said softly, "I'll just practice. Humph. If you dare to slack off again, I won't care about you anymore," Shangguan Linglan said as she dragged Jingyu into a house. Inside the house, there were sandbags hanging from the beams. There were dozens of sandbags in the house. Jingyu stood in the middle of the sandbags. Shangguan Linglan swung the sandbags forcefully. Jingyu's task was to avoid the sandbags without any warning. Without a doubt, Jingyu's fate was miserable at the beginning. "Ah!" With a cry of pain, Jingyu was knocked to the ground by the sandbag without any way to avoid it. "Ah! It hurts!" Jingyu wanted to cry, but had no tears. She lay on the ground and didn't even want to get up. "Silly. Listen to that. Listen. It's the sound of the sandbags flying over." Shangguan Linglan didn't show any mercy. He scolded her in all kinds of ways. Jingyu was furious at Shangguan Linglan's scolding. He jumped up abruptly but was knocked away again. He was scolded again and jumped up again. It was an incomparably firm cycle. "Why are you lying on the ground? Get up. Are you still going to practice or not? If you encounter danger, do you still want Xiao Chun to save you? Do you want Xiao Chun to get hurt because of you?" Jingyu was so tired that she didn't want to move at all. However, as soon as Shangguan Linglan said this, Jingyu jumped up as if she had been injected with chicken blood. She started to fight again. Outside the house, Xiao Chun, Jingyu, and a few others stood outside, watching the actions of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan. Their eyes flashed with a strange light. Jingyu, who was dodging between the sandbags, never once said a word of giving up. "You blames herself." Jinglang sighed deeply as he looked at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun lowered his head and did not say anything. "Let's go." Xiao Chun turned around and walked out. Xing Er glanced at Shangguan Linglan, lowered his eyes, and followed behind Xiao Chun. How could Xiao Chun not understand what Jinglang meant? Jingyu always believed that Xiao Chun's death was caused by her. Although Xiao Chun did not die, Jingyu still blamed herself. That was why she kept whipping herself to make herself stronger. "Xiao Chun, even if I can't help you, I don't want you to get hurt because of me." This was what Jingyu said when she decided to train. Shangguan Linglan was undoubtedly a strict instructor. If she could see, it would be easy for her to dodge the sandbags. However, Jingyu couldn't see. She could only rely on her weak hearing to dodge the sandbags. In the first few days, Jingyu was injured almost every day. At night, Xiao Chun saw Jingyu take off her clothes and reveal the bruises on her skin. Xiao Chun's heart ached. Chapter 1141. Jingyu. Xiao Chun held Jingyu's hand tightly. Jingyu was already very tired. When she heard Xiao Chun's words, her eyes became misty and she blinked slightly. "Don't practice anymore. Believe that I can protect you." Xiao Chun's eyes were filled with heartache as he stared at Jingyu. "Xiao Chun." Jingyu froze when she heard this. Then, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. She looked in the direction of Xiao Chun's voice and looked at Xiao Chun. Then, she slowly said, "I want to stand by your side, not behind you." Xiao Chun Do you understand what I mean? Jing Yu's voice was gentle and moving. Xiao Chen's hand that was applying the medicine froze, and he helplessly lowered his head. Jing Yu, what should I do with you? Xiao Chen leaned over and gently kissed Jing Yu's forehead. Then he said calmly, "Go to sleep." Jing Yu was probably really tired. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, she slowly closed her eyes and smiled faintly. Xiao Chen quietly watched as Jing Yu fell asleep. The night was silent. After a few days of training, Shengwan Linglan was called away because of military matters. Jing Yu was finally able to have a day of rest. After a few days of hellish training, Jing Yu felt that she had lost a lot of weight. It was terrifying. The weather today was really good. Jing Yu blissfully lazed in bed with Xiao Chun for a long time. Then, she reluctantly got up and sat in the courtyard to eat. She originally thought that today would be a beautiful day. She would be able to spend some quality time with Xiao Chun. However, because of someone's arrival, this beautiful moment was broken. "Miss Jing Yu, I'm so happy to be able to see you. You don't know how much I've missed you during this period of time." Sob, sob, sob. "I heard that the 9th Empress died. I was so happy. No, I've been sad for a long time." Sob, sob, sob. "Miss Jing Yu, don't worry. Even without the 9th Emperors, there's still me. I'll take care of you. I'll help." Jing Yu's face darkened. Although she couldn't see what was going on, she could imagine from Muyu's earth-shattering screams that the one who touched Xiao Chen's lightning must have met with an unimaginable fate. After an earth-shattering commotion, Jing Yu silently took a sip of the tea in her hand. She vaguely felt that someone was approaching her. "Don't try, I can't see," Jing Yu said quietly. "Ah!" Muyu cried out in horror. "Didn't you say you couldn't see? How did you know I was testing you?" "I guessed." Jing Yu rolled her eyes and replied calmly. Then, she fumbled for the teacup in her hand and placed it on the table. Such a beautiful pair of eyes. How did you become blind?" Muyu sighed deeply. His words made Jing Yu's mouth twitch violently. She silently said in her heart, "I'll endure it. Your eyes were so beautiful in the past. They even changed colors. How did you become blind in the blink of an eye?" Muyu continued to nag. "Helly and Theo, don't you think so? It's a good thing that such a beauty is already married. If she's blind and still not married, no one would want her." Muyu muttered. She opened her mouth and said that she was blind, closed her mouth and said that she was blind. "You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.